So we're going to be drawing from these three heads. It might be helpful to print them out so you can draw on top of them as I'm going to be drawing, and then draw a second one on paper. So maybe have two copies of each ready to go, and just follow along with me here. So based on the last video, we're going to take those head construction ideas and apply them to these heads on here. I'm going to draw it digitally first, and then I'll draw it on paper. But we're starting out with a sphere for the cranium, a center line down vertically through the face, and then a horizontal line through the pupils of the eyes for our halfway mark. That's going to mark off the brow ridge. The top of the brow is slightly above. The bottom of the brow, or the eye socket, is slightly below that mark. And I'm marking off halfway there just to double check based on the top of the skull, the bottom of the chin. This head is tilted, so when I divide that lower half in half again, a quarter of the way up for the bottom of the nose, which lines up with the bottom of the ear, it's a little bit off because the head is tilted. So you'll see that angle on the brow ridge here. Paying attention to how the eyes sit into the brow ridge there, I'm going to look for the keystone shape leading us to the bridge of the nose between the eye sockets here, that trapezoid shape coming down from the top of the brow. That's one of the most important shapes we can find to get a likeness. I'm using a sphere to create some form and volume for the tip of the nose, and then I'm looking for the front plane of the nose and attaching it to where the base of the nose meets the surface of the face. The nose is a complex form. We want to break it down into the simplest shape possible. Here I'm going from that inside corner of the eye straight down to the outside edge of the nostrils, or from the nostrils straight up to the inside corner of the eye there. It doesn't matter which way you go or the order that you find those in, but noticing the distance between them and how they line up with each other vertically can be a really helpful landmark. I want to square off the side plane of the forehead. Find that angle for the cheekbone coming down from the ear all the way down through the chin. That plane change from the front of the cheekbone to the side plane of the head can be really helpful in just noticing why the light is doing what it's doing as that form shadow wraps around the cheekbone there. Then I'm finding a spherical shape for the form of the mouth and for the chin. And then we break up the mouth into smaller spheres here. That's going to help us find that lip line between the upper and lower lip. Again, here too, paying attention to the lighting will help us find those edges. And then coming straight down from the eyes here, this doesn't always line up depending on what the pupils are doing, but the center of the eye can line up with the corners of the mouth. It's not the most reliable landmark, but it can be helpful if it's a challenge to put the corner of the mouth in the right place. So here I'm going to draw it on paper. I'm starting off with a circle again. That sphere for the cranium is a helpful shape. A circle is a helpful shape because it's going to look the same from every angle. So no matter which way the head is turned or tilted, we can always start off with a circle. And then I'll use that center line to figure out vaguely where the chin is going to land. It's not perfect. More of an educated guess. But that'll tell me where the bottom of the head is. Dividing that in half gives me that line for the eyes, and then dividing that lower half in half again, quarter of the way up, should bring us close to the base of the nose. So on the right side, on our right side, his left, where the brow meets the cheekbone, the right side of the head there, you can see those angles silhouetted by the hair. Those are really important angles to pay attention to. They tell us how steep that brow ridge might be. That can change from person to person. So that was one of the first things I looked for here. Here's that shape between the two eye sockets. I'm moving that center line over a little bit. It's okay if your drawing evolves and adjusts along the way. Those first few marks are important, but they can still be flexible. Just looking at this photo next to my drawing now, as I record this after I drew this, the angle's a little bit off on my drawing. I think the head is a little bit more upright. That's okay as long as the head still makes sense with itself. Our goal is to find the likeness through accurate proportions, and we want to get accurate proportions by understanding these forms in their simplest form possible, simplest structure possible. Whether it's the eyes or the nose or the mouth, any of the features of the face can be really complicated on the surface. We want to build them out from the inside out with the most efficient amount of marks possible, or understanding them with the least amount of plane changes possible. The trickiest part of trying to simplify a complex thing is knowing what to leave out rather than what to put in. It's tempting to just copy all of the details that we see on the surface, but practicing this simplification process is a discipline on its own, and it's really helpful for drawing portraits. So this whole week, this whole project is going to lead us into portrait drawing. But this stage is more fundamental and probably more important. So here at the base of the mouth, that mouth sphere where it connects with the chin below creates those forms and volumes that are catching some really subtle light and creating some really subtle form shadows. I usually start there, and then we can line up the corners of the mouth with the eyes above. That helps me get started for deconstructing the mouth. And then those really simple forms for the lips will help me find the lip line. And we want to pay attention to the light and shadow here. Just to understand the different plane changes and the different kinds of edges. You can also see the volume of the mouth affecting the silhouette of that outside edge of the face on the right side. Coming down from the cheekbone on the way to the chin, there's that little bump of form from the mouth. So here I'm going to start off with the sphere again and a center line down through the middle just to show the direction of the gaze. This head looks like it's tilted forward a little bit. It may also be tilted away from us to her right. If we look at the top and bottom of the skull here and mark off our halfway mark, looks like the brow, the eye line is a little bit below. So that tells me the head might be tilted down on her right side or slightly tilted up on our side. You can see the angle of the head. So tilted a little bit forward, but also a little bit down and away from us. It's very, very subtle, but it's worth paying attention to, especially in these first few marks. Even though they're not detailed, we want to be really, really specific about any tilt or angle that the head might be turned, because so many of our measurements are based off of that. If something's not level, you want to know. So here I'm looking at the top of the brow, the bottom of the eye socket, lining up with that cheekbone again, going straight across to the top and bottom of the ear. A good way to find the top of the ear and lining it up with the brow can be to picture the person having glasses on their face. If they're wearing glasses, that arm of the glasses going back to the ear helps describe what that side plane of the head will look like. So here I'm looking for that keystone shape between the eye sockets above the bridge of the nose. And just carving out these simple planes of the side plane of the nose, that inside plane of the eye socket. These eye sockets are a little bit deeper than the last face that we drew. So that angle, that steepness of the eye socket can change. A lot of the likeness is in there. It's going to either catch a lot of light or cast a shadow. So we want to pay attention to those and try and simplify them, but still get them as accurate as we can. The cheeks have a little more volume here. And same with the mouth. You can really see the form of that sphere shape of the mouth here from this angle. The mouth isn't a two-dimensional thing just drawn onto a flat surface of the face. It has form even underneath the mouth itself. If you look at a skull and the teeth, the way they wrap around, it's almost like a small tennis ball kind of size. And that spherical shape overlaps with the base of the nose. Here you can see the corners of the mouth going up to the eyes again. Now as I draw this on paper again, I'm going to start off with the sphere. I'm going to find that center line and try and be sensitive to that angle, really subtle tilt of the head. Just not quite horizontal. Then we can just chop off this whole plane here of the brow and down where it meets with the top of the cheekbones at the bottom of the eye socket. Might help to feel around on your own face. Think about how the shape of your eye socket runs into your cheekbone and creating that angle we see silhouetted against the background on her right side, on our left. From there, I'm paying attention to those front and side planes of the nose, using the top of the brow and the base of the nose to find the top and bottom of the ear. I'm sure if we measured really, really, really closely, some of those landmarks and so-called rules wouldn't always line up. It's just to get us close enough in the beginning. We want to draw simply and efficiently. It's just to help us get going. We can always fine tune it later on. Here I'm looking at that three-dimensional spherical shape for the mouth. Another reason spheres are helpful is from when we learn about light logic and how light and shadow can define each other in a really smooth and seamless way. A sphere is a really good way to understand light and shadow. That's why we practice it that way. So when we build this head out of flat planes and spheres, it's a lot easier to understand why the light and shadow shapes are doing what they're doing. Rather than just moving along across the face, copying everything that we see, we can look at the big picture and really understand what we're seeing. So we'll draw in a more effective way, but it's also easy to be more decisive and make adjustments, learning to ignore or change things about the photo too. So it all starts here with the really simple shapes. The better we get at this simple breakdown, the more we'll be able to fine-tune a portrait and spend more time on it. Once we have a good foundation, I'll start paying more close attention to the model and taking this 3D head construction model we've been practicing, and I'm adjusting it based on her face and her features. In the first few minutes, all of these heads look pretty similar. It's the same constructed head with the similar proportions. The further we go, the more it starts to look like a specific individual. We want to take these ideas and principles and take their flexibility and adjust them and apply them to the face in front of us that we're trying to draw. So that too is another thing we want to practice, and that we're only going to get from doing this over and over again with different heads and different faces. So I find that it's helpful to do lots of these drawings, but especially doing lots of drawings of different kinds of heads and faces. Variety is really helpful. Might be more challenging in the short term, but in the long term, you're going to have a better grip on all of this. I'll add in a simple shape for the hair. Good practice to just simplify the hair into a single shape and not try and draw the individual strands of hair. Think of it as a simple, big shape with form and volume, just like the face, just like fabric. This last head is tilted up a little bit more than the others. Still a 3/4 view with good light. I'm gonna find my center line. The chin is a little bit closer to the sphere than it was on the others because the head is tilted back, and you'll see the eyes are higher up on the head. They're not quite halfway. If the top of the ear is below the top of the brow and the bottom of the ear is below the base of the nose, that means the head is tilting back. And then similarly, or inversely, I guess, that if the tops of the ears are above the brow and the bottom of the ear is above the base of the nose, that means the head is tilted forward, looking down. Moving a little bit faster on this one, I've got the planes of the brow, the keystone shape between the eye sockets, the front plane of the nose, a sphere for the mouth and the chin, and a good understanding of where that side plane of the head starts and where that line of the cheekbone, how that interacts with the eye socket. So here too, the shadows are going to be really helpful. Still using a sphere for the tip of the nose. That sphere shape for the nose is at the tip of the nose. It's not coming out of the base of the nose. That sphere is a little bit above the base of the nose. So knowing the difference between the tip of the nose and where the nose actually attaches to your face is important. Finding that bottom plane of the nose and simplifying that into a simple plane is another helpful way to do that. So coming down from the eyes, looking for the corner of the mouth here, paying attention to all these interactions of that sphere shape for the mouth overlapping with the chin, creating all these different plane changes. You might notice I draw the eyes and the nostrils and the lips, the features of the face. I'm drawing those last. I don't want to draw the eyelids themselves or what's happening between the eyelids before I establish the eye socket. I want to understand how the eye fits into the eye socket first. Then it's going to be a lot easier to draw the eyes themselves. Because the camera that took this photo was closer to her face, there's a little bit of lens distortion here. The ear might seem smaller than it is because it seems further away since the front of the face is so much closer to the front of the camera lens. And there's more of a roundness in the brow. That's okay, we can include it in our drawing. Hear that line of the cheekbone coming from the top of the ear down underneath that sphere of the mouth is what's describing that form shadow going from her cheekbone under the eye socket all the way down to the corner of her mouth there. And then here too, now that I've got a pretty good foundation for the head construction, I'm starting to pay more attention to the specifics of her face. It can be a delicate balance of sticking to these so-called rules, or they're more of just like helpful guidelines, but using these guidelines but still letting the personality of that person's face come through in every mark that you make. I guess it'll come through whether we're aware of it or not, but probably helps to be conscious of it as we draw. Use the light and shadow shapes where they're helpful, but don't get carried away with surface details and wrinkles in the skin and stuff like that. We want to draw these heads from the inside out. The better we get at describing a head in really simple terms, the better we're going to understand it. So then when we do go deeper on the details, we're going to be way more in control of our marks.